and there are people who infiltrate resistance movements and subvert it. And one of the ways to subvert a resistance movement is to make them either fight with each other, which is what's happening on Twitter, or it makes them do something totally crazy and act in a way that turns everybody off to the resistance.
Yes.
And what's happening right now is that, like, the behavior that you're seeing is just turning people off towards wanting to fight New World Order tyranny.
Oh yeah. Well, look at the words they're using. So since we're talking about them, and you don't seem to mind me talking about them, Nick Fuentes or whatever, he calls his organization America First. Well, okay, I am someone who believes America is first.
Yeah.
I'm an American. But now you've turned that into something negative that it doesn't mean. And he also calls himself a Christian, which he's not. And so people look at him and say, oh, that's Christianity. That's not Christianity. Running around hating Jewish people.
No, and you know what it does too? It makes people not like Christians.
Yes.
And then what it does is it makes wokeism more dominant.
Yes. Yes, he plays right into it.
It's almost like you're doing it on purpose. Keri, so glad to have you.
Oh, it's just us?
Well, yeah, it's just us. It's just us.
I thought we were going to be accosting people in the street.
No, we're just doing a normal podcast talking to each other.
Oh, but in the back of the pedicab?
Yeah, so we can do this later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, no, there's no accosting anybody today.
I brought my parasol so I could beat people off.
No, well,
if they got unruly.
That's fine. Apparently, in the school curriculum, they teach you how to do that anyway.
They teach you how to do what?
Beat people off.
Oh, if you.
No pun intended.
Oh, sorry.
Do you get it? Yeah, you get it. Yeah.
I thought you were talking about pedicab school.
No, we're talking about the local elementary schools.
I see.
So
that's true.
You used to be a social justice goblin?
I did used to be a social justice goblin. Goblin's a good way of putting it. Troll.
What
zombie. What happened? How did I get into it? College.
Well, just in general, like the elevator pitch. How did you get into it, and what made you,
There's a lot of doors into social justice or woke, and they're all different identity doors. And I went in through the women door. I went in through the feminism door in college.
So when did you go to college? I'm kind of asking you.
That's okay. I made you myself. I graduated in 2000 from Duke.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
you're like a little older than me.
Yeah.
I graduated in 2009 from Binghamton. So, okay.
A little's kind.
All right.
Yeah. So I picked it up. I was a biological anthropology and anatomy major, but I was a women's studies minor. And I picked it up in my minor. Plus, I worked for Amnesty International when I was in college. And I picked a lot of it up through Amnesty.
Working at a lot of these NGOs, you go in there wanting to be a good person and make a difference positively and, have a sense of spiritual enlightenment or, fill a spiritual void. And then you work for these organizations and you realize that these organizations do nothing to actually help what you want to help and probably make the problems worse.
Yeah, they actually – well, what I learned about social justice is exactly that. It's the exact opposite of what it says it is. So the whole time there, I got into it because it teaches you that this is a belief system that's all about ending oppression, ending sexism, ending racism, ending homophobia, bigotry, but it actually turns you into someone who pushes those things.
Well, it's also funded by banks and Rockefellers and the people that run and manage a lot of these NGOs or give tons of money to these NGOs do it to offset capital gains taxes, not pay taxes, and guide the social justice narrative into helping the rich get richer. Yeah. And people have such a low self-worth as a result of, the family degrading, the food the poison food you're consuming, what's being put on television, the shots that people are potentially have to take all till they're 5 years old, or the shots that the plethora of shots that are unnecessarily forced onto children. All of that just creates a culture where people just feel a lack of self-worth. And then when you have a lack of self-worth and you want to do social justice, you're just not going to be good at social justice because the first injustice you should be focused on is making yourself happy. Because if you're miserable, you're going to just make people into your own image.
Oh, yeah. They're fueled by resentment. A lot of people, they tell you that all your problems are the result of someone else. It's a scapegoat religion. So they give you someone to hate or an enemy or a target to hate and to put the focus, the onus, like all the blame goes on that scapegoat. And so for people who have not learned how to take responsibility for things or haven't learned how to deal with tragedies of life, it's very appealing. Yeah, it's not you. It's not your fault.
No, it's not your fault. It's the patriarchy or it's the system or it's white males or it's, and what's kind of crazy is now you're seeing it on the right.
Are you?
Yeah, because now it's the Jews.
Oh, I am seeing that on the right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of that, and they're it's the same thing. They're both the groypers I've been hearing from a lot of these idiots in my comments.
Yes,
but they're the same thing. They basically say, it's all about identity groups, and we need to look at people as based on what identity group they're in. The only difference is the order in which they put the identity groups, like who's the good guys and who's the bad guys. I'm like, but it's the same evil religion, in my opinion.
It's almost like they're symbiotically working together to erase real identity that people have.
Yes. Are you a Christian?
I'm Jewish. I'm Jewish. I got a Star of David's hat. You don't see that?
Oh, I didn't see it first. No, I see it now.
Yeah.
Well, they've told me that they call me a Jew, which I'm not, but that,
But who cares?
whatever.
It's not
But
like
who
an insult.
cares?
Like, that's
I
not an
know,
insult.
I know.
Like, why is that insulting?
They're like, she's a Jew. And then
cool, that means we're successful and we own sports teams and we have lots of money and maybe my dad bought me a central bank. Like, okay.
Then they said, oh, she thinks like a Jew. What's that mean?
I don't know. You know what's funny though? It's like it's like putting pronoun. The way these people operate, it's like it's pronouns in your bio.
Yes.
It's like instead of saying he, him, or they, them, or some nonsense, you're calling yourself like Bugs Bunny Groiper or Socks Groiper.
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's literal wokeism, but the opposite, but like the total opposite of it. And ultimately, it's actually what wokeism leads to.
It is. Well, I think, like you said, they need each other. They feed off of each other because they're each other's boogeyman. And you know what's so funny? I called them the retarded racist Care Bears because they do that. Like you said, they put something at Bugs Bunny Groiper or whatever. Yeah. Like, I'm Wizard Groiper. It's so infantile.
But they're all virgin Groipers.
Yeah. From what I can tell, a lot of them seem to be, like the incel kind of community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what it is, though? It's a product of what society devolves into, right? And this is my view on it. Like, I actually am not, like, angry at this stuff. What I'm more angry at is about how, like, the algorithm on X seems to reward that kind of behavior versus, like, meaningful activism to fight tyranny.
It does reward shock value. Anybody saying anything controversial. I've gotten to the point now where half the time I think... because people are getting paid for engagement, they will say something that they know is going
to get engagement.
Right. And there have always been people who say things they don't actually believe, just, con artists and actual grifters and all that. But now there's this added element of if you can say something really shocking, you don't have to believe it at all, but you're going to get people who love it and hate it, and there's going to be a lot of controversy in the comments, and that's a bad
and you'll get engagement, and then you'll get some money, and people are willing to do this because the economy sucks.
Yeah.
Your money is broken and worthless. And now you have high interest rates, so you can't even benefit off of the liquidity in the financial system. And so people just do things as a means of desperation. And this is just another, like this groiperism stuff, I really feel as though it's a result of desperation. And also potentially it could be this is federally astroturfed by the alphabet agencies.
Do you think that the groipers in particular are federally astroturfed also? Yeah.
Yes. I don't see how it's not, right? And it doesn't mean that everybody who falls into this is.
Right.
But it's like this, right? Like, look at the people who commit mass shootings and do terrorist attacks for the most part. Minus, like, people like McVeigh, which is awful, right? Or like the Oklahoma City bomber and a couple of other people like that. But the majority of people who, like, commit school shootings and do all these things now, and McVeigh was like a veteran with a bunch of PTSD and had a lot of other stuff happen.
Right.
And he was also manipulated by people in these agencies, I believe, to do something horrible. Like it wasn't like he did this on his own. It was people were telling him what to do, and there are people who infiltrate resistance movements and subvert it. And one of the ways to subvert a resistance movement is to make them either fight with each other, which is what's happening on Twitter, or it makes them do something totally crazy and act in a way that turns everybody off to the resistance.
Yes.
And what's happening right now is that, like, the behavior that you're seeing is just turning people off towards wanting to fight New World Order tyranny.
Oh yeah. Well, look at the words they're using. So since we're talking about them, and you don't seem to mind me talking about them, Nick Fuentes or whatever, he calls his organization America First. Well, okay, I am someone who believes America is first.
Yeah.
I'm an American. But now you've turned that into something negative that it doesn't mean. And he also calls himself a Christian, which he's not. And so people look at him and say, oh, that's Christianity. That's not Christianity. Running around hating Jewish people.
No, and you know what it does too? It makes people not like Christians.
Yes.
And then what it does is it makes wokeism more dominant.
Yes, he plays right into it.
It's almost like you're doing it on purpose.
And
then there's also videos of him telling people to go storm the Capitol in 2020 while he had a mask on potentially. Or there's other videos while he's walking around with a mask on, and nothing ever happens to Nick. The no-fly list is not even. You can't even prove that he was on a no-fly list. It's just speculation.
Yeah.
Because maybe he was denied flight to get on to somewhere. My friend Courtney Turner did a whole podcast talking about this, and I'll send it to you. It's really good, and I'm probably gonna post a link to it after this episode is over with. But you're associating with people like Ali Alexander, who's like a known pedophile.
Yeah.
And
There's
the stuff that they were saying leading up to January 6th was only going to put people on a list and incentivize the government to take rights away from people. Like, it just seems very obvious. Like,
oh, well, look what
it's very obvious. And then you also have people who are tweeting like 20 times a day, and I'm just like, dude, nobody has time. Nobody with a real job has the time to tweet 20 times a day unless you're getting paid. And if you're only tweeting about the same thing, some organization is probably paying you. I think that's a fair and logical assumption if you're a high-profile person, or if you're not, then you're just some loser who lives at home with mom and dad that's never accomplished or amounted to anything. And then you have to ask, well, why is it that you've never accomplished or amounted to anything? What is your diet like? Mm-hmm. What was your situation like at home? How come you were never taught what it means to have a healthy boy-girl relationship? What stopped you from playing contact sports in high school? And I think that's more of like how you got to approach the situation versus demonizing them, because these people, like this grip or Nazi shit too, is like the inverse of like being demonized by woke.
Yes. You
know what I mean? And so eventually, if this wokeness stuff gets jammed down your throat, eventually people are gonna say, oh yeah, well, since I can't say this, maybe I'm just gonna go fully opposite of this, even though it's the same thing.
That's the fear.
There's no other like a lot of people who have no foundation. Never really built anything by themselves, never really actually had to face any real challenges. It's a very easy ideology to fall into. And like, if you're like a young man and like you're not in shape and you were like kind of bullied or picked on a little bit as a kid, or you never really felt like you fit in, and it was hard for you to like, have happy relationships, and then you see like, and then you go out and then you see the types of people that are, getting laid and getting partners all the time. It's very easy to fall into that. Without any guidance.
Well, yes, and they are preaching essentially the same ideology, but again, it's just a matter of what identity groups they're putting at the top and the bottom. I remember there was a Richard Spencer speech a few years ago, to bring up another one, and it was basically a social justice speech, except it was white nationalists, but it was all the same stuff. He was talking about looking at the world as this struggle for power between identity groups, except in his version it's like, oh, but the white guys are at the top. And so that's very appealing to people if you're telling them that the world is like this, that it is a struggle for power between identity groups, but their groups are at the bottom. Well, then you give them an incentive to be attracted to someone who's saying, yes, the world is like that, of course, but actually your groups are at the top. Come over here with us where your groups are at the top. And but it's the same, it's two sides of the same racist coin.
Yes, and also the people that gravitate towards these movement, with everything I mentioned, the people who fit that type of psychological profile are just generally speaking more likely to commit a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because you do this stuff out of desperation,
yes.
Right? And then you have this group and this movement that feels very artificially astroturfed, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that somebody out there is hoping that one of these idiots snaps and does something really stupid and crazy. Coincidentally, during maybe the most important election of our time.
Yeah.
It seems, when the Biden administration has been an absolute disaster for everybody, it just seems like, and the trust in mainstream media is at an all-time low, and the trust in any kind of experts or actual establishment type of thinking has just gone out the window. It just feels like something like that would be very convenient for something like that to happen leading up to an election, and just feels as though everyone's talking about the next bird flu, the economy collapsing, which could happen, World War III, all this stuff, all things that could happen. But I think what's more likely to happen is some idiot who has Groyper in their bio or something like that, generalizing, does something really stupid to make all of us look bad, which
and because they call themselves Christian and America first, then the media gets to go, the woke media gets to say, hey, look, these are Christians who did this, these are conservatives, these are America first.
This is what America
people.
First means. It's terrorism.
Yeah, this is what nationalism means. It's like, no, that's not what it means. It's like, you guys are perfect patsies, whether you intend to be or not. Like, you were just
James Lindsay talks about the start to interrupt, but James Lindsay literally says that the Nazis and the communists are literally they need each other.
They do.
You know, they need each other. Like the communists love the actual Nazis because these white supremacist crazy Nazis like will actually further cement the communist viewpoints, which is why I've noticed is that, you know, a lot of these woke Marxists called everybody a Nazi who disagreed with them on everything for the past 4 years, but they have been strangely silent when actual Nazis who think Hitler is a good guy have been circulating all over Twitter.
Yes.
You've noticed that.
Yeah.
They've been kind of silent. Like, how come you're not calling out real Nazism?
Right.
It just seems odd.
Well, it's because they want to paint with that broad brush and make anyone who's not woke, they want that to be what Nazi means. They don't want you to be able to look at and put it in relief to someone who actually is like a white nationalist. It's funny because being someone who left woke after spending 20 years in that belief system, and now, you know, I use my podcast to try and illuminate what social justice, what woke actually is, to help people leave the woke. And so the criticisms I get sometimes from woke people is they call me all those things. They call me right wing. They call me alt-right. They call me white nationalist, all these things incorrectly. And then what's funny is that I'm like, but see, I know, like I get the same kind of hate mail from actual white nationalists that I get from you woke people.
You should share that more on social media.
Yeah.
Just share that on Instagram. Like, hey, just for the record, like these people, the white supremacists don't even think I'm white, right? Like, they think, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're thinking that I'm the one, like, I invented DEI. I
think like a Jew.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
Well, what's also crazy, too, is that the same people, by and large, who have pronouns in their bio that were like, that shilled the vaccine mandates, that shamed you for not putting a mask on, that were the most lockdown Nazis, to put it loosely, during the pandemic, are the same people that are like actively marching with, you know, Hamas supporters and supporting the Palestinians. And a lot of them legitimately think that Hamas is an actual resistance group, and that the acts that occurred on October 7th was resistance to oppression. And this is a feminist telling you that raping someone is resistance. And so, like, with all that stuff being said, you mean to tell me that the people that, like, the people that try to force COVID tyranny onto you, put pronouns in their bios, want drag queens reading to children, think 5-year-olds can consent to puberty blockers, and played a huge role as to why there's a bunch of bums and transients all over every single major city while violent crime is no longer being prosecuted. You mean to tell me that they also hate Jews?
Yeah.
Why are we still playing this game anymore, right? And if the people on the right were serious about this, instead of criticizing, you know, Israeli involvement, which there is a legitimate criticism for AIPAC and for all of that stuff. Like, that's legitimate. That's totally fine to hear. That's like, if I were a politician, even though I'm very pro-Israel, being a Jew with family members in Israel, like, I wouldn't approve money to give to Israel or any other but I would also just say, like, I'm not giving money to any foreign country, and this is where we're at. Yeah. But I'll side with what you're doing in theory, and I'll direct attention to private charities that we can support, and I'll support with my own pocket. But I'll never vote for any money that gets sent to a foreign country.
Right, not to Ukraine either.
Any country, yes, yeah. But what was I saying? I've totally kind of like lost my train of thought.
Well, to me, it sounded like you were talking about how their belief system is internally incoherent. So you will have people who, you were saying, you know, feminists, for example, who are out there saying that rape is a legitimate form of protest.
Yes. Which kind of makes you think, like, why are we playing this game anymore?
Yeah.
Why are we even bothering to do this? Like, this is retarded. But then, you know, and if you're on the right, or if you want this to actually stop, and you're an influential, like, conservative person, instead of criticizing, you know, Jewish involvement or Israel or whatever, even though there might be a place for some of it, right? Maybe if you want to win at this particular juncture, I think the best thing to do is embrace it. Just be like, yeah, these people who are trying to demonize you for being a conservative that loves America, who, like, actually has traditional values, also happens to hate Jews. So you're right, we shouldn't play this game anymore. I agree with you. But and the fact that they're not doing it makes me feel as though they don't actually want to win. And they enjoy also being part of an oppressed class, just like these woke people do. Like, they get off on being victims. They get off on complaining. They get off on, like, they get off on losing. And I think seeing that on X and on Twitter has kind of been disenfranchising me from wanting to make as much videos. Because I'm still making good stuff. That's how we met, right? But, like, I was a lot more active a couple years ago making videos than I am now. And I think a lot of that stuff has just kind of made me...
Well, there's a lot of
if that makes
people
sense.
who are not I was talking about this with someone else recently. There's a lot of people who are not. There's become an economy of criticizing woke and criticizing the left, which is in one way that's great, because it used to be that there was so much fear that nobody was doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, but now there's an economy doing it, so now you get a lot of insincere people doing it, and they're just doing it. Their priorities are order. It's not necessarily about actually defeating like an evil ideology that's destroying civilization. It's more about, oh, I got to build a brand and I got to do this and I got to do, and it's more about chasing fame, money, and power.
Yes.
And so when those things, like, this is why I think you have to have one of the benefits of having a belief system, a grounding belief system, is that it should put your priorities in order. Now, it depends on what that belief system is. But if you don't have if you're sort of just floating and you don't really have anything that's mooring you to something solid where you believe, like, this is my hierarchy of values and this thing is most important, and like for me, God, most important, that's it, then all the things that God is telling me I should be pursuing come before those things that often, as humans, human nature, our Adam nature wants to move those things to the top. Do you know what I mean? And so it's really easy. Even some people who get into stuff with sincere motives, I think over time they start to, if they don't have a grounding belief system that keeps that in check, something bigger than themselves. If they think, oh, I can just keep my ego in check, a lot of people
they don't. A lot of people, they get so consumed with the fight that they're in that their identity is being in the fight.
Yes.
And instead they fail to realize that they are in the fight so they don't have to be in the fight
yes
anymore. Like,
yes,
you're doing this
so
because you don't want to. Like ultimately, like, I was I don't think we never really started following each other until we met at the council.
Okay, can we just, at some point we have to tell the story?
We are going to tell the story, actually. Well, sure. Well, I'm going to tell them after this.
Yeah.
But so during the primary, I was like a big DeSantis supporter.
Oh, I was a big DeSantis supporter too. That's who I wanted.
I was a big DeSantis supporter. I was very unapologetic about it. And I think that a lot of the DeSantis supporters kind of were really terrible with how they communicated, and Ron DeSantis and his team should have had a new team and actually done real long-form podcasts and talked to regular people, and he just didn't do that. And I think that's a big reason why Trump just steamrolled him, because I think he was actually better at being Trump than Trump was. The reason I like DeSantis is because I just felt like he was just a better version, and like DeSantis's ability to govern is actually symbolic of like a lot of what Trump's ideals were in terms of actually putting America first and stepping away from globalism. DeSantis was just doing it better, and part of what makes a successful movement is when the child is better than the parent.
Yes.
And so I just felt like the best way to cement Trump's legacy would just be to have DeSantis take the reins, because you wouldn't have even had DeSantis if it weren't for Trump, and he's just better, and that's all that there is to it. And there shouldn't even be any attacks lobbed at all. It's just what I thought was a fact, right? And I tried to explain this and was very clear about it, and I like put the DeSantis in my bio, and was very open about it. And I think that I probably lost out on. I probably could have had a lot more followers if I just stuck with the Trump thing. You know what I mean? Or I probably would have gotten on more podcasts, or I've gotten more virality with some of my videos and stuff during that time frame. But generally speaking, like, I wanted DeSantis to win because I thought that he was going to be much better at his job than Trump, and then as a result of DeSantis winning, I wouldn't have to do this shit anymore.
Yeah. Well,
and that's kind of like how I feel, right? Where it's like, going to council meetings is fun, going to protests is fun, doing all this stuff is cool. Confronting people there's a rush to it, but it's also scary, and it takes a lot out of you. And the time that you spend doing that is time that you take away from working, because I'm not making money doing this; I'm spending money.
Right.
And you do put your physical safety on the line, and you're also just taking away from, like, you're actually living life.
Yeah.
And the purpose of doing this stuff is so that you can actually live life and not be a perpetual hamster wheel runner. That's why I was so adamant against this whole COVID narrative. Because if you don't speak now, and this new world order comes to fruition, you never get a house. You never get to grow your own food.
Yeah.
You never have a community. You never, like, the idea of actually having a nuclear family with a foundation becomes almost impossible. And then when that happens, you actually do destroy society. So that was where I'm at. So I'm like, well, if DeSantis wins, I don't have to do this shit anymore. And I only started to actually get active for real, just because all I wanted to do is ride the tricycle. Like, and that's really it. Like, all I want to do is ride this tricycle and ride the tricycle and be comfortable and have a free schedule and spend time with my girlfriend and do jiu-jitsu and work out and swim and fish. Like, it's really all I want to do, right? So I'm like, oh, if DeSantis wins, I can do that and not have to worry about this bullshit anymore. So that
Well-
was where that's kind of where I was at on that, you know.
Well, so people will they call me all kinds of things, right? They put all kinds of labels on me. But when people ask me to describe myself, I'm just a lady.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm just a lady. I'm a Christian, but I'm just a lady, and I happen to have a podcast where I talk about my old belief system because this, I think, is very important. I think it's the path that God has led me to try and help other people leave it. But if at any point God's like, you know what, that's not what you should be doing anymore, focus over here instead, then that's where I will go. And personally, I would like to be, like you said, if we weren't fighting against this evil ideology, which I'm not quite as optimistic as you. I think it'll be a couple generations before it's defeated.
I'm actually very optimistic, and we're going to talk about it later. I'm very optimistic.
But if it were up to me, there's a couple different things
Hey,
that
Keri,
I want to do.
question.
But I want
Do
to
you
open
own
an
any-
antique shop.
Do you own any
What?
Bitcoin?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, it's been very good to me. I had a friend in 2017 who made a lot of money in Bitcoin prior to that, and he is a lot smarter than me. And he did a 2-hour sort of Bitcoin for Dummies evangelism with me,
Oh, and now you got it.
and he convinced me in 2017, to buy in.
So you're doing good. You're doing well.
Yeah.
I think that something like Bitcoin. I think the creation of Bitcoin and the atmosphere around it and the ecosystem in that space is going to make society amazing. It's going to change the world irreparably and turn the tide back in a way that it's going to turn back in a way that the tide back in a way that you'll see an unprecedented amount of human flourishing. I really think that.
I don't know if I'm that confident about it, but I'm not. I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I just
can
don't
tell you
have.
why I'm confident about
Why?
it. All right. First of all, who are the main holders and main proponents of Bitcoin? Millennials.
Okay.
Okay, younger people, right? And specifically our generation are the people that are adopting this the most, right? And with how our fiat system has worked, it's literally destroyed the middle class. It's made it impossible to have families. It's made it impossible to actually have the American dream and life that we had in the 40s and the 50s and prior to all that stuff, right? During the Great Prosperity. Having an asset like this allows us to return to that great prosperity at a local level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It allows you to say, okay, I can let my money work for me and I get to spend time with my family. I get to work on my own schedule. I get to make things and produce things based on what I want to do and not have to be beholden to engagement farming on Twitter. I don't have to say a bunch of crazy shit that I don't believe just so people can like me. I don't need acceptance from people in influential circles, be it on the left or the right. I'm my own self-sovereign human being. And there's a book called The Sovereign Individual that I've started reading that talks about how technology and the internet is actually going to make big government completely obsolete and create a society of human flourishing where governments are going to be almost not even necessary.
Okay, but here's
and also,
the thing.
Sorry, one more thing.
Okay.
Also, because of how this asset works, if the trend keeps going the way in which it's going, right, you will see a bunch of fabulously wealthy Bitcoiners, like Bill Gates level, Elon Musk level, if not higher. Okay, and then those people. When those people with that kind of money wind up dictating how society functions, it'll be a society that's a lot more aligned with how we think versus how they think. And I think that time is coming sooner than later. And the fact that you can have money that can't be censored and can't be debased, it's going to wake a lot of people up where they don't have to even play into or feed into whatever this system is.
Okay, one thing.
Sure.
And I'm someone who I believe in Bitcoin,
Okay.
and
I try to tell Michelle about it.
when it stops fluctuating, okay, because you're talking about letting your money work for you and
Yeah.
you're making money, but part of the reason it's a good investment right now is because it is fluctuating so much. So when it evens out and it becomes, if it does even out and it becomes something that you're using in everyday currency, like you're buying things with Bitcoin,
Yes.
at that point, then it's not an investment thing at that point.
No, but it becomes better money. And if we adopt to a Bitcoin standard, you can't print unlimited. You can't print more Bitcoin to fund a war that nobody wants.
Right? This is true.
You can't. The incentive to debase your food, no longer exists because the reason we're debasing our food is because inflation it's a way to hide the cost of inflation. And you look at the Bill Gates appeal fruit where the bananas doesn't break off. You've seen those commercials, right? And
No, I haven't.
Oh, you got to watch the Appeal Bill Gates commercials where like people are trying to peel off a banana and the banana is like silly putty.
Okay.
Yeah, you have people talking about eating bugs and eating crickets, and big ag culture companies like Tyson's could very well be putting insects, and Tyson's actually is like an owner of a large cricket farm right now potentially, and they could be theoretically putting all types of bugs and insects and whatever it is into the chicken, and they'll have some chicken meat, and they'll dilute the actual nutritional value of the meat, and then they'll say, oh no, this is chicken. And because of money printing and government contracts and nepotism and all this other stuff, right? They can just create laws. They'll just create some weird legislation or not do anything legislatively to protect you from these companies, and they'll overly protect those companies, allowing them to just completely debase and destroy your food. When you have a sound money system, you just can't do that anymore. It's just impossible, because like nobody's just going to give you their Bitcoin to do that.
Yes.
Right, but like, if a big agriculture, like if someone like Tyson's Chicken or like a Bill Gates or somebody like that wants to monopolize all the farmland, they donate heavily to the whatever candidate they think is more likely to win or embrace their ideology. They use the talking points to get that person elected, and then all of a sudden, like, hey man, we're going to end homelessness, and this is why everyone's eating bugs now.
Yes.
So that's
okay.
I think Bitcoin kind of stops that from happening.
Okay. What happens if there's an EMP?
Well, if there's an EMP, there's no more New World Order, and your only currency is guns and bullets.
Right.
And also, if you have this
and trucks,
safely,
pickup trucks.
Yeah. No, there's no pickup trucks because there's no gas.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If an EMP occurs, you can't get gas. You can't actually...
You can't convert it and run it on vegetable oil?
I mean, you still can't produce things, though, right? Like,
yeah.
It would be a lot harder to, like, even travel or do anything. And if a big EMP occurs, there's no surveillance state anyway. And everything becomes hyper-localized, which is the ethos of Bitcoin, which is not even a terrible thing.
But you're right. You're right about the currency in that point being
yes.
Ammo.
Also, if your stuff is on like if you have your stuff safely on cold storage, once everything gets back on, like you still have your funds.
Right.
And that's also another reason why you will own Bitcoin, because if that does happen, you don't think some nefarious government connected to the World Economic Forum or those people in general are going to say, well, because of this, now everyone needs a universal wage, and we're going to issue our own central bank digital currency that everybody gets, and this is what you can spend your money in, and we're going to put expiration limits on your money so that this never happens, and then you just encourage mass consumerism, and you think clown world's bad now. Imagine what will happen if people aren't using that asset. And but I think that the power of that asset is just making people better.
Yeah.
And so I think it's actually like, I'm actually very bullish on humanity, and that's the thing in conservative media and in right-wing Twitter, being bullish on humans doesn't pay the bills.
It may not, but it's
if
also...
that makes sense. It
may not, but it's also just, I mean, if you were to ask me if I'm bullish or not on human nature, I wouldn't say I'm bullish on human nature, but I'm bullish on the future.
Yes.
That's different than human nature.
I'm bullish on just humans.
Are you?
Yes. Yeah, I'm very bullish. Yeah. Why would I not be?
Because humans have a great capacity for evil. We also have a great capacity for good. Yeah. But I think we need a governing force. Like, I think people need a belief in something bigger than themselves and bigger than Bitcoin.
Yes, but you don't. But Bitcoin is literally, not to sound blasphemous, but I really do feel like Bitcoin is God's money. Like God works in mysterious ways. Like God could work as an entity. God could have implanted the idea to create a currency that changes society for us to be more in God's image of what He wanted us to be. And using something like this will, because of the properties of Bitcoin, does inherently make humans better and more closer to God. And look, like, I mean, do you hang out with a lot of Bitcoiners?
No.
A lot of I do. The Bitcoiners that I hang out with, they're all having children. They're all getting their meat from locally owned farms. They're spending money on things like land. They want to localize the school system. All of that stuff.
Well, let me interrupt 1 second. These are the kind of people I do hang out with. I guess I don't happen to know if they own Bitcoin.
Okay, but these are like people who are going to like the Bitcoin meetups are all on that that level, right? Whereas everybody else, while the people I know who are in Bitcoin are all having kids and families, everybody else is having abortions.
Right.
And
well,
so
I live out in the country.
Oh, so so do I. I'm in Johnson City.
Okay. Oh, I'm in Johnson City all the time.
What?
Like, I'm going to be there this weekend.
What?
Yeah.
You and your husband, We actually have our 7.5 year anniversary coming up.
Well, my husband works out there, so we're gonna be out there for the 4th.
Where does he work? Okay, where does he
Well,
work?
he's a musician, so he plays all over. So he plays Johnson City, Fredericksburg,
Is there a 4th
Comfort,
of July event
Bernie.
in Johnson City? I should know this.
He's got on the 4th of July, he's got one in Comfort and one in Fredericksburg, but not Johnson City proper.
You know what? Maybe we'll try to go to Fredericksburg.
He's gonna be at Allstat.
Okay, we should figure this out. I was gonna hang out with my buddy Kyle in Georgetown with his wife, but I can just see if he wants to come out to Fredericksburg because that place is.
If not, he's there all the time, and he plays Lukenbach all the time. They'll be doing another month of shows, I think, at the beginning of next year.
Yeah, we have a garden. You should come.
I would love to.
That would be amazing. All right. Yes. So anyway, back to what we were talking about with winning and all this other stuff, right?
Okay.
I think that the reason that I like DeSantis so much is because he just had a track record of actually winning, right?
Well,
and people like losing and they like being oppressed, and people. People talk a big game online about everything, but there's a lot of people will talk a big game online, but they won't actually put themselves in the fire. And this is where you come in. And when I met you at the city council, well, I met you before, right? And so we met again at the city council with the trans bill.
This is the thing for anyone who doesn't know. I didn't know Alex was dressed like a trans activist.
I was a drag queen and I was a beautiful woman, and this is what peak femininity looks like. And if you can't understand that, you are a literal Nazi.
And so I was sitting, and I had prepared something I was going to say when it was my turn to speak. And they're pretty aggressive. I had already done some events in Austin. I did one with Michelle Evans and Megan Murphy and Isabella Malbin and Mary Lou Singleton. We did that at the library, and there were tons of these trans activist protesters there and woke protesters who were screaming and beating on the windows and just were acting very possessed and demonic.
Yeah, they're insane. Okay.
And so when you sat down next to me, I thought you were one of them for real. And you said something like, we know each other. And I thought for a second, oh, this is one of the protesters from the last event. Because there was one who started kind of stalking me after that, like online anyway, started following me and sending me messages. So you said, we know each other. And I was like, no, we don't. And I got up and left.
I was flabbergasted. I was like, what the hell is this? I texted Michelle and I'm like, yo, Keri walked away from me. Like, that's crazy. Like, does she not know any of this? But here's the thing, right? Like, even if so, right? Like, in order to beat this type of ideology,
yeah,
you have to be them. And that's what I've realized. Instead of in order to beat some of these people, you can't beat these people if they scare you. You have to be like really comfortable and almost relish in the fact that this is what you're around. And because in order to beat people that are an ideology that you think is bad, you have to come face to face with it, right?
Right.
And I know, like, look, you're a female, it's different, versus being like a
man
okay,
but
stuff.
If you had sat there and not said anything to me, I wasn't going to get up. It was when you spoke to me that I was like, no, I'm not sitting next to this person who's going to try and talk to me the whole time. This woke enemy who wants to bother me.
I just wanted you to film me. I just wanted you to film me. That's all I wanted was for you to film me. But either way, you're like, if I were you and somebody did that,
yeah,
I'd be like, wow, girl, you look good. I would overly play it. You go, girl. There's nobody more beautiful than you.
Yeah.
You are divine. You are a queen. Get it? Spin for me. Like, you have with stuff like that. It's like, have you ever done like acting or theater?
Not really. I mean, I've done a couple of. We did a comedy video. Yeah, we've done some stuff on the channel, but
I did a few improv classes, right, at Cold Town, and they're super woke. But the lady who owns the show, I actually really like her a lot. She's a really nice lady, really cool, and she's also a phenomenal teacher too. Her name is Tari, phenomenal teacher. And one of the first things that she taught us was the principle of saying yes and. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to stuff, instead of arguing and getting mad, right, the best thing to do is to yes and everything. Anytime like somebody is saying something that's totally insane, no, I'm gonna be even more insane than you, so you can see firsthand how crazy you sound. And I feel as though that is that's the best way to wake people up. And that's the best way to change the culture, because you do it in a way where people are voluntarily doing it. They don't feel like anything's being shoved down their throats. They're happy. Like the best fighter, Mike Tyson said this, nobody more dangerous than a happy fighter. Mm-hmm. And I think that, embracing the insanity and relishing in it while also keeping your head and understanding that this is temporary, because if you do a good job, it is temporary. It makes you that much better at, like, reshaping the culture so that we're not in full-blown clown world. Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
Well, I think that you and Alex Stein, for example, do a great job of that. And I've been out on the streets with Alex Stein once before. And I think there's a time and a place for me to. I do have fun doing that, but it depends on the time and place.
Also,
and it
we're in a
depends on
city
the
council,
content.
And like nobody was gonna harass you anyway, because like I would have just gotten removed if I was like being aggressive to you.
Yeah, but are you really offended that I got up? Because the thing is, it's
I'm not offended. No, I'm not
it's
offended
my
at all.
time, and I'm not going to sit there. Like, I choose when I'm going to interact in a playful, joyful warrior way, or when I am in prayer and I'm focusing on the thing I'm saying. And if a person sits down next to me and is trying to create mischief, it's like I choose in that moment whether I'm willing to engage in that or not.
Sure, I respect that.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
totally respect that. I'm just offering you my perspective.
Right,
I'm just
right,
offering
right.
you my
Okay.
perspective. I'm just offering you my perspective on how I felt when that happened.
Oh, well.
That's all. I obviously don't care now. We're friends and we're doing this podcast and everything.
Right,
like that.
but
I'm just saying, like, from
Oh
my
my
perspective, like in the
gosh.
future, that was how I was. That's how I was like.
Well, had you been who I thought you were, which was a woke person who had recognized me from a previous event, who had been harassing me after that event, then I hope you did feel that way. That I was like, have a nice day, goodbye.
True.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go move over here and not engage and not
Was
engage,
my
play the
costume
game
that
that
good
you
where
want
you
to play.
really thought I looked that?
That's exactly what I thought you were.
That's crazy. You thought my costume was that good?
Yes.
That's insane. How many kids do you have?
My husband and I are currently trying for kids.
Me and Vanessa are trying for kids.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. Well, good. I will say a prayer for you if you say one for me.
Yeah, I would love to. Yes, I'm really excited about the idea of having kids. It's scary, but I'm like, I think it's something I can do.
Yeah. How old are you again?
38.
It's a good time.
Yeah, I really want to do that. I want to have kids of my own, and I think that like a lot of the stuff that everyone's freaked out about, I think that I'm doing my best to build the foundation as such where I can be immune to it. There's like, I've been praying and stuff lately, trying to. And one of my favorite prayers is like Psalm 91.
Oh, what's that one? Remind me.
Where it's like you who lodges in the shadows of the Most High is like protected from like the shelter of the Almighty, you know, or like I will stumble upon I will trample like a lion and a viper or something like that. And
Yes.
Like, yeah.
So
and, like, God will guide me and like, you know, as long as you're like with God and you're like genuinely abiding by these principles of whatever what's happening and you say this, you will be protected.
Right. That day, actually, that city council day, I had just found a psalm book, like one of those little pocket books of just the psalms, from for $1 at like a thrift store, and I was reading that one. There were a bunch that I was reading that day, and just trying to stay focused on that and not these other people. And I highly recommend, if you're doing something that makes you nervous or afraid, like to get a psalm book, because it was very and just stay in that, and then don't pay attention to the other stuff.
I'm realizing too with that, right? And I'm just starting to learn. Like I only just finished reading Exodus, and I've just started like Leviticus, right? So it's been
You're
a very
reading
slow.
in order.
Yeah, I think that's how you should read it, as an order, right? To know what's happening. But one of the things I'm realizing is that like the psalm book was written by a king. Right, it was like King David.
Yeah.
Like the most powerful person in Jerusalem at the time. Somebody unbelievably powerful. And if somebody that powerful spent that much time writing a book of poems for God, there's probably something to it about the fact that God is real.
Yes. Also,
is my viewpoint, right? Like.
Also, well, someone who had that much sin in his life but had actual repentance for it, that's what I've been thinking about with him, is how much he would like fall down on his knees and pray that God would wash his sins away and confess them. And I guess I was thinking about that because I've seen a lot of people in the public eye who get found out to be hypocrites or to not be living according to what they say they believe in. And then a lot of times in the public eye, you don't see actual repentance. Like, you sometimes will see a fake apology. Sometimes you see no apology at all. Absolute, arrogance and just an inability to accept responsibility for your shortcomings. And so, I don't know, I've been thinking about that in relation to David a lot, just in how he was like, sincerely, it seems like this really aggrieved him that he had done these things that he knew were
wrong
in the
I
sight
don't
of
even know the
God.
story fully of King David, but I'm just like, if a king could write this,
Yeah.
right, like that's powerful, right? So it's something that should be listened to or thought about. But yeah, I'll say like prayers before going to council meetings and before I go like confront people and do stuff like that if I can. Like I confronted the Attorney General, Bill Barr, about a year ago.
Oh yeah.
Did you know that?
No, I
saw him
didn't.
out of the JW. And I'm just like, well, hey, how come Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide while he was under your watch at the Bureau of Prisons and stuff like that? And I was like, I had been praying for like, I'd started doing this for a couple months, and it was very basic. Like you'll say like the Shema in the morning and some prayers at night, whenever you can. And I was doing it like off my phone and whatever it is. And even now I'm still bad at it because sometimes if I get home really late from pedicabbing, I'm just too tired to do anything, and I'm just like, oh, I gotta go to sleep. But and I think that me having done that probably like I think that there's something to doing that, because it does allow your brain to like come up with ideas that you otherwise might not come up with. Like I think it does make your head clearer.
To pray.
Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah. Well, also, I mean, again, to go back to this for a second, like the context in which when I go out and I try to, if anybody asks like, how do you say what you think in this culture or whatever, how do you do, there's different tools for different jobs. There's humor for some jobs. This is what I believe. Humor for some jobs. There's seriousness for others. So being sober-minded. There's also righteous anger for others.
Yes.
And you don't use the same. And there's also loving encouragement for others. And you don't use the same tool for every job. There's also rebuke. And you don't. It just depends on the context. And so, just so that you are clear, I think what you do is a gift and a talent. I think that kind of comedy is almost like real life person trolling.
Yes.
And I find it's one of my favorite kinds of comedy. And so I think what you're doing is like, I think you're blessed with it, and you should keep doing it as long as it brings you joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot. I've been a little burnt out lately from some of this stuff.
If it stops giving you joy, then take a break from it and pray about like, is this what I'm supposed to keep doing or not? Because I think God will give you direction. Like, if this is the path or not that I'm supposed to stay on.
No, I know. And who knows? Honestly, regardless of what happens, we're about to wrap up. Regardless of what happens, I was given an opportunity to actually make my voice heard for something meaningful to help make society better.
Yeah.
Right, and to help get us closer to God than where we were in the past. I'm really happy about that. I'm really glad that I've had the foresight, the courage, and the ability, and the follow through to do a lot of what I've wanted to do. There are still things I want to do, and generally, when it comes to making stuff, I'm doing things because I want to do it for myself. And I can make videos and do things on my own terms. And for somebody that drives a tricycle for a living, like I have it, the way in which my life has gone is I'm like innumerably blessed beyond measure. Got a house, got a loving girlfriend for 7.5 years, got a chance to like I get to have these incredible.
Do you have any debt?
Zero debt. Fascinating conversations with incredible people. It's already a blessing.
Yes.
It's already a blessing, and now it becomes okay. Well, is this what you're going to do forever? Is this what you're going to do temporarily? And whatever the voice tells you to do is what you should do, because I do think that voice is God telling you what to do. Yeah. So you just got to listen to the voice, and if you feel like you can't listen to the voice, yes, I think a break and figuring out what you want to do, go travel. I've thought about wanting to go to Israel for like 10 days. I think all of that definitely definitely gets you at least to figure out what you're doing. And if you still don't have a plan for a few years, you know what? Maybe that's the plan, is to just relax and just enjoy life, and you don't have to make everything all the time. Like, when you have your momentum, use it till it's gone, and then once it's gone, just take a break.
And focus on your family, which sounds like a right-wing, like, remember that old organization? You're too young. It was called Focus on the Family.
I love that.
But yeah.
All right, well, Keri, how do we get a hold of you?
You can find me online at Real Keri Smith. And it's called Deprogram with Keri Smith is my show, and this was so nice. Thanks for having me.
I had a lot of fun. This was really cool.
This was cool. I thought we were actually going to go out and accost people, but this was a lot more fun.
We should. You know what? If you ever want, I actually do like the idea of inverse campaiigning and doing street interviews. If you ever want to do that with me, let me know. It's always fun to have another person with me.
I'm happy to do that with you.
I love that. Well, Keri, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.